Welcome to another deep dive with us. Today we're going to be tackling all about maintenance effectiveness.
Sounds interesting.
It is. It's from a company called Sigga, and they make planning and scheduling software for SAP.
Okay.
And we're going to try to extract some of the key ideas about, why should we even care about this whole maintenance effectiveness thing? And what are some of the ways that, software and just kind of like better processes can lead to some pretty big wins.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
All right, so let's jump right in. And I think, one of the things that's kind of a theme throughout this document is this idea of like planned maintenance versus unplanned maintenance.
Right.
And I think anyone who's ever, had to deal with like fixing things, whether it's in their home or in like a business setting,
Yeah.
knows the pain of like something breaking down unexpectedly.
Yeah, for sure.
And so Sigga makes this point that, there's a huge cost difference between those two approaches, like doing something in a planned way versus just, kind of like scrambling to fix it when it breaks. Oh, yeah.
And they actually give an example that's like super concrete. Like, let's say you have a simple pump replacement.
Oh, yeah.
If you plan it, you schedule it, you get the parts, you have the technician ready to go, it might be like $1,000 job.
Right.
But if you let that pump break down unexpectedly, now suddenly you're looking at like $5,000 or more.
Wow.
Because not only do you have the cost of the repair itself, but you also have, lost production. You might have to like expedite shipping for parts.
Yeah, rush charges are killer.
Yeah, exactly. So it really kind of like snowballs into this much bigger problem. And that's kind of the core idea that they're getting at here.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And I think, it's something that maybe we don't always think about. Like, we know that unplanned maintenance is a pain.
Right.
But maybe we don't always quantify like how much more expensive it really is.
Yeah, the full impact.
Yeah, and Sigga actually goes on to like kind of list out all of these different consequences that ripple through the entire business when you have this like reactive approach to maintenance. Interesting. What kinds of things?
Well, I mean, the obvious ones are, the downtime that throws your production schedule off, that
Right.
the budget overruns because now you're having to pay for all these emergency repairs.
Mm,
And they even talk about safety risks, because if your team is forced to rush repairs under pressure, that's when mistakes are more likely to happen.
makes sense.
Yeah. And then they get into some of the less obvious impacts like reduced equipment lifespan.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because if you're not properly maintaining things, they're not going to last as long.
Right.
Higher energy use because, a machine that's not running efficiently is going to use more energy.
Uh-huh.
And even things like quality standards can take a hit because if you're constantly in firefighting mode,
Mm.
you're not necessarily paying attention to the details.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, so it really kind of like paints this picture that reactive maintenance is not just a maintenance problem.
Yeah, it's like a whole business problem.
Exactly. It affects everything.
So what's the solution?
Well, that's where Sigga comes in with their whole argument for like why you need their software.
Okay.
And their core argument is that by using their planning and scheduling software, you can shift to this more preventative approach.
Right. So instead of reacting, you're like anticipating.
Exactly. And they really focus on two key benefits. One is increasing what they call wrench time.
Wrench time.
Yeah, and the other is just like getting more of your planned work done, so fewer emergencies, basically.
So more the cheap $1,000 jobs and fewer the $5,000 jobs.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So I want to talk about this wrench time thing because I'm curious.
I'm not really sure what that means.
Yeah, like I've heard the term, but I don't really understand like why it matters. So
Yeah.
wrench time is basically the percentage of a technician's day that is spent actually working on repairs.
Oh, okay. So like tools in hand actually fixing the problem.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not travel time, it's not paperwork, it's not waiting for parts. It's like the actual hands-on fixing time.
Okay, that makes sense.
And the reason it matters is because it's a direct measure of productivity and it directly correlates with cost saving.
Right. The more time they're actually fixing things, the less time they're wasting on other stuff.
Exactly. So Sigga's claim is that with their software, companies can see realistic gains of like 10 to 30% in wrench time.
Whoa, that's huge.
Yeah, it is. And they even quote McKinsey, which is like, a big consulting firm. And McKinsey says that companies are seeing like double digit or even like doubling their wrench time with digital tools.
Wow. So it's not just Sigga saying this. It's like a real trend.
Yeah, it seems like it. And I think, we can all relate to this. Like if you've ever had to wait for someone to come and fix something.
Oh, yeah. You just wanted to get to work already.
Exactly. Like all that time that they're spending like driving around or filling out paperwork, that's all time that you're not getting the problem solved.
Right. And it's costing you money.
Exactly. So wrench time is all about minimizing that wasted time and maximizing the time that's actually spent fixing things.
Okay, so how do they actually increase wrench time? Like, what are the specifics?
Well, I think a big part of it is having this centralized system where you can track everything.
Like a single source of truth.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can see the history of the asset. You can schedule inspections. You can plan repairs. You can even automate like work order generation.
So it's all in one place and everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, and that visibility allows you to anticipate needs, make sure you have the right parts and expertise lined up ahead of time, and dispatch technicians strategically.
So you're not sending someone across town for a job that could have been done by someone who was already nearby.
Exactly, yeah. So it's all about being proactive and efficient and using data to make smarter decisions.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and Sigga actually provides this really helpful pie chart that breaks down how a technician's day is typically spent.
Oh, interesting, like where all that time goes.
Yeah, and you can see the big culprits right away. Travel time, paperwork, waiting for access to equipment.
Yeah.
It all adds up.
Yeah, I could definitely see how that would eat into their wrench time.
Yeah, and it's something that a lot of companies struggle with without even realizing it.
Right, because it's not always obvious.
Yeah. So the first step is to understand where those inefficiencies are hiding. And then you can start implementing strategies to address them.
Okay, so how do you actually measure wrench time? Like, is there a standard way to do it?
Yeah. Well, Sigga mentions a couple of methods. One is technician self-reporting.
So they basically track their own time.
Yeah, which can be challenging because it relies on them being diligent about logging their activities.
Right, and not everyone's good at that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where mobile EAM solutions can come in because it makes it easier for them to track their time in real time.
Ah, smart.
Yeah, so as they're doing things, they can just like tap a button and it logs it.
Okay.
The other approach is more observational. It's called the day in the life method.
Day in the life. What's that?
So basically, someone shadows a technician for a day and records everything they do.
Like a time and motion study?
Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
more resource intensive.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But it can provide some really valuable insights into those hidden time wasters that might otherwise go unnoticed.
So it's like a trade-off. You can either get real-time data or you can get more in-depth observations.
Yeah, exactly. And regardless of the method, the key takeaway is that you can't manage what you don't measure.
That's true.
If you want to improve wrench time, you need to understand where those inefficiencies are hiding.
So measure first and then improve.
Exactly. And that's where Sigga software comes in because it provides you with the tools to track and analyze that data and make those improvements.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about wrench time, but you mentioned that there was another key benefit that Sigga highlights.
Oh, right. Yeah. So the other benefit is getting more of your planned work done, which basically means fewer emergencies. And they actually use this hypothetical scenario to illustrate the financial impact of this.
Interesting. Tell me about it.
So they say, imagine you have an annual maintenance budget of $15 million.
Okay, $15 million.
Yeah, and then they show how by improving the ratio of planned to unplanned work, you can save a ton of money.
So like doing more of the $1,000 jobs and fewer of the $5,000 jobs.
Exactly. Yeah. And they use these multipliers to represent the cost difference between those different types of maintenance.
Okay,
So planned maintenance gets the lowest multiplier because it's the cheapest.
makes sense.
And then as you move towards those unplanned breakdowns, the multiplier gets higher and higher.
So the more unplanned the work is, the more expensive it is.
Exactly. Yeah. And their point is that even shifting a small percentage of your work from unplanned to planned can result in significant savings.
Okay, so give me an example.
So they say, imagine that you improve that ratio by just 10%.
10%.
Yeah, that's over $1 million saved.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
It is. And it really kind of like drives home the point that being proactive with your maintenance can have a huge impact on your bottom line.
Fewer production breakdowns and a general increase in asset availability.
So it's not just about the money, it's about like the smoothness of the whole operation.
Exactly. Yeah. And those things are harder to quantify, but they're still incredibly valuable.
I agree.
So we're starting to see a clear picture here. Planned maintenance saves money, wrench time is crucial, and software like Sigga's can help optimize both.
Makes sense.
But before we move on, I want to get a little more granular with this concept of wrench time, because Sigga provides this pie chart that breaks down how a technician's day is typically spent.
Oh, the pie chart you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and I think a lot of our listeners will be able to relate to this because it really shows like where all that time goes.
Okay, that's where.
So you can see the big culprits right away: travel time, paperwork, waiting for access to equipment. It all adds up.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And it reminds me of this time when I was having some work done on my house.
Oh, yeah.
And it felt like the project was dragging on forever.
And I realized later that a lot of that time was spent waiting around for the contractor to actually start working on the problem.
So low wrench time.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that I think a lot of companies struggle with without realizing the true impact it's having on their bottom line.
It's like a hidden cost.
Yeah, and so the question is like, what are some of the specific things companies can do to improve that situation?
Right, let's dive into that a little deeper. Well, I think a big one is optimizing travel time. Like if your technicians are constantly crisscrossing the facility or driving between sites,
Right.
that's eating into their wrench time.
You might group similar tasks together,
Yeah.
prioritize jobs based on location, or even use technology to like optimize travel routes.
Exactly. And then there's the paperwork.
Oh, paperwork,
In a lot of companies, technicians are still bogged down with like manual data entry and reporting.
which not only takes time, but also like increases the risk of errors.
Precisely. Mobile EAM solutions can be a game changer here
Okay.
because they allow technicians to input data in real time,
Oh, I see.
access work orders digitally, and automate reporting processes.
So it frees them up to focus on what they're actually good at.
Exactly, fixing things.
What about that waiting for access piece of the pie? That seems like a tricky one to solve.
It can be.
Hmm.
But often it comes down to better communication and coordination between maintenance and operations teams.
Yeah, I imagine a lot of those delays could be avoided if there was just like a clear understanding of who needed to be where and when.
Absolutely. And again, technology can play a role here.
Okay.
Some systems allow you to schedule downtime in advance,
Oh, that's smart.
notify relevant stakeholders, and even track progress in real time.
So everyone's on the same page.
Exactly. And those frustrating delays become a thing of the past.
I like it. So speaking of technology, you mentioned that Sigga software emphasizes a shift from reactive to preventative maintenance.
Right.
For someone who might be unfamiliar with that concept, can you explain what that looks like in practice?
Sure. Think of it like this. Instead of waiting for a piece of equipment to break down and then scrambling to fix it,
Right.
you're proactively identifying potential issues and addressing them before they become major problems.
It's like going to the doctor for regular checkups.
Exactly.
Instead of waiting until you're so sick, you have to go to the emergency room.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And just like those regular checkups can save you a lot of pain and expense down the road,
Right.
preventative maintenance can save your company significant time, money, and headaches.
I can see how that proactive approach would lead to fewer breakdowns,
Yeah.
increased asset lifespan, but I'm curious about the practical side of things.
Sure.
How does Sigga's software actually help companies achieve this preventative maintenance nirvana?
Well, one of the key features is the ability to create a centralized maintenance schedule
Okay.
based on the specific needs of your equipment.
So you're not just like using a generic schedule for everything.
Right. It's tailored to each asset.
Okay.
You can input data about each asset, including its expected lifespan, recommended maintenance intervals, and any historical issues you've encountered.
So it's almost like building a personalized health plan for each piece of equipment.
That's a great analogy.
Mm-hmm.
And the software can then automate a lot of the scheduling process,
Oh, nice.
sending out reminders for upcoming inspections, generating work orders, and even flagging potential issues based on data trends.
So it takes a lot of the guesswork and manual effort out of the equation.
Exactly. But it still requires people to be diligent about inputting data and following those recommendations.
Right. Technology can only do so much.
Exactly. That's why Sigga emphasizes the importance of not just implementing software, but also fostering a culture of preventative maintenance throughout the entire organization.
So it's about getting everyone on board.
Yeah, from the technicians on the front lines to the executives in the boardroom.
You mentioned technician buy-in earlier, and I think that's a really important point because getting everyone on board with a new system can be tough.
It can be.
Have you seen any successful strategies for overcoming resistance to change in maintenance teams?
Well, I think involving technicians in the process from the start
Yeah.
is essential.
Oh, interesting.
Getting their input on how to optimize workflows, integrate the software into existing processes, and address any concerns.
So it's not just about handing them a new tool and saying, here, use this.
Exactly. It's about collaboration and making sure everyone understands how the technology can benefit them personally.
Right. Make their jobs easier.
Exactly. And let's be honest, sometimes resistance comes down to a fear of technology.
Especially for those who are used to doing things a certain way.
Absolutely. That's why providing adequate training and support is crucial.
So don't just throw them in the deep end with a new software program and expect them to figure it out on their own.
Right. Investing in proper onboarding, ongoing training, and accessible support resources is key.
So they feel confident and comfortable using the tech.
But the benefits have to outweigh the challenges for people to fully embrace it.
And I think that's where it's important to focus on those tangible benefits we've been talking about.
Like what?
Increased wrench time, reduced downtime, a more predictable workflow, and ultimately a less stressful work environment.
All good things.
So it's not just about technology for technology's sake.
Right.
It's about using technology to create a better work experience for everyone involved.
I think that's a message that resonates with both technicians and management.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the operational and financial benefits of preventative maintenance and increased wrench time. But I want to shift gears a bit and talk about those less tangible benefits that Sigga mentions.
Like what?
They touch on things like overtime reduction and fewer production breakdowns.
Okay.
And I think we can all intuitively understand why those are good things, but can you unpack those a bit further?
Sure. Well, when your equipment is well maintained and you're operating in a more proactive manner,
Right.
you're naturally going to see fewer unexpected breakdowns.
Right.
And those breakdowns are often what lead to those frantic all-hands-on-deck situations where overtime becomes a necessity.
So it's not just about saving money on overtime pay. It's about creating a more predictable and sustainable work environment for your team.
Exactly. And that has a ripple effect on morale, job satisfaction, and even employee retention.
Because nobody wants to work in a constant state of emergency.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when your team feels less stressed and overworked, they're more likely to be engaged, productive, and committed to the success of the company.
It's a win-win for everyone involved. And what about the impact on production? I imagine fewer breakdowns translate into a smoother, more efficient operation overall.
Absolutely. When your equipment is reliable and operating at peak performance, you can meet production targets more consistently, reduce lead times, and improve customer satisfaction.
So it's about creating a more resilient and predictable operation that can adapt to changing demands without skipping a beat.
Exactly. And that predictability has to be a huge relief for anyone who's ever experienced the chaos of a major production breakdown.
It certainly is. And let's not forget about the safety implications.
Oh, yeah.
When you're operating in a reactive mode, you're often forced to make quick decisions and take shortcuts that can compromise safety.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So a preventative approach is not just about efficiency and productivity, it's about creating a safer work environment for everyone.
Precisely. By addressing potential hazards before they become problems, you're minimizing the risk of accidents and injuries.
So it's another one of those less tangible benefits that can have a huge impact on the overall well-being of the organization.
Absolutely. And it's something that companies are increasingly prioritizing as they recognize the link between safety, productivity, and profitability.
Speaking of prioritizing, I want to touch on something that's been on my mind throughout this discussion.
Okay.
Sigga focuses heavily on the financial benefits of improved maintenance practices.
Right. Which makes sense from a business perspective.
But what about the broader impact? How does effective maintenance contribute to the overall sustainability of a business?
That's an excellent point,
Yeah.
and it's something that's often overlooked.
Yeah.
When you think about sustainability, you tend to focus on things like reducing energy consumption, minimizing waste, and using eco-friendly materials.
Right.
But effective maintenance plays a crucial role in all of those areas.
So it's not just about saving money and increasing efficiency.
Nice.
It's about reducing your environmental footprint and being a responsible corporate citizen.
Precisely. Well-maintained equipment is more energy efficient,
Yeah.
produces less waste, and has a longer lifespan.
Oh, that makes sense.
That means you're consuming fewer resources, generating less pollution, and reducing your overall impact on the planet.
And it also means you're less likely to experience those catastrophic equipment failures that can result in environmental damage and costly cleanup efforts.
Exactly. So effective maintenance is not just good for your bottom line, it's good for the planet too.
It sounds like a win-win for everyone, the company, the employees, and the environment.
It certainly is. And it's something that I think more and more companies are starting to realize.
I'm curious, have you seen any specific examples of companies that have successfully integrated sustainability into their maintenance practices?
Yes, absolutely. There are companies that are using predictive maintenance techniques to optimize energy consumption,
Wow.
implementing circular economy principles to extend the lifespan of their equipment, and even using data analytics to identify and reduce waste in their maintenance processes.
So it's not just about doing the bare minimum to comply with regulations. It's about taking a proactive approach and finding innovative ways to reduce their environmental impact.
Exactly. And I think that's where the real excitement lies. We're seeing companies use technology and data in creative ways to not only improve their maintenance practices, but also make a positive contribution to the planet.
That's inspiring. It's a reminder that effective maintenance is not just about fixing things, it's about building a more sustainable and responsible future.
Absolutely. And it's something that every company, regardless of size or industry, can and should be doing.
It sounds like a powerful shift in perspective.
It is.
Moving from a reactive, cost-focused mindset to a more proactive, holistic approach that considers the well-being of the company, the employees, and the environment.
Exactly. And I think that's the key takeaway here. Effective maintenance is not just about fixing problems, it's about creating a better future for everyone.
Well said. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive into maintenance effectiveness, let's leave our listeners with some food for thought. So we've covered a lot of ground today, from the nitty-gritty of wrench time to the bigger picture of sustainability.
Yeah, it's been a lot.
But I think it all boils down to a simple question. How can we shift our thinking about maintenance from a necessary evil to a strategic advantage?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. And I think the answer lies in reframing our perception.
How so?
Instead of viewing maintenance as a cost center, we need to start seeing it as an investment.
Okay.
An investment in reliability, efficiency, safety, and ultimately long-term profitability.
I like that.
So it's about moving away from that reactive break-fix mentality and embracing a more proactive, holistic approach.
And it starts with leadership.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
If the people at the top don't see maintenance as a priority, it's going to be an uphill battle to implement any meaningful changes.
I imagine that requires a shift in mindset.
Yeah.
Moving away from short-term cost-cutting measures to a longer-term vision that recognizes the value of investing in a well-maintained operation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not just about allocating more budget to maintenance.
Okay.
It's about fostering a culture where maintenance is everyone's responsibility,
I see.
where data is used to drive decision-making, and where continuous improvement is the norm.
So it's a cultural shift as much as a financial one.
Precisely. And it's a shift that can have a profound impact on the overall success of the organization.
Okay, so let's say a company is ready to embrace this shift. Where do they even begin?
Well, the first step is to assess your current state.
Okay.
Where are you at with your maintenance practices? What are your biggest pain points? What are your goals?
So it's about taking a step back
Right.
and really understanding the lay of the land before you start making any changes.
Exactly. Once you have a clear picture of your current situation, you can start developing a roadmap for improvement.
Okay.
This might involve implementing new technologies, streamlining processes, investing in training,
Right.
or all of the above.
So it's a tailored approach based on the specific needs of the organization.
Absolutely. There's no one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to maintenance effectiveness.
That makes sense. What about the role of technology? We've talked a lot about software solutions like Sigga's,
Right.
but there are so many other technologies out there. Sensors, AI, predictive analytics.
Yeah, it's a lot.
How do companies navigate this ever-evolving landscape and choose the right tools for their needs?
It can be overwhelming, for sure.
I bet.
I think the key is to start with a clear understanding of your goals, and then evaluate different technologies based on their ability to help you achieve those goals.
So it's not about chasing the latest shiny object. It's about finding solutions that are a good fit for your specific situation.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that technology is just a tool.
Okay.
It can enable and enhance your maintenance practices, but it can't replace the human element.
So it all comes back to people, doesn't it?
It does.
The skills, the knowledge, the dedication of the people on the front lines.
Absolutely. Investing in your people,
Yeah.
providing them with the training, the resources, and the support they need to succeed is just as important as investing in technology.
You know, you've mentioned the importance of data a few times.
I have.
I'm curious to hear more about that.
Okay.
How can companies leverage data to improve their maintenance practices?
Data is absolutely key.
Okay.
With the right data, you can identify trends, predict failures, optimize maintenance schedules, and track performance over time.
So it's about moving from a reactive gut feeling approach to a more data-driven, proactive approach.
Exactly.
It sounds like we're on the cusp of a really exciting era in maintenance,
Yeah.
where technology and data are converging to create a whole new level of efficiency and effectiveness.
I think so too.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see what the future holds for this often overlooked, but critically important field.
Me too. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from the cost of unplanned downtime
Yeah.
to the power of data-driven decision-making.
It's been a journey.
It has. I think it's safe to say that maintenance is no longer a back office function,
Nope.
but a strategic imperative for any organization that wants to thrive in today's competitive landscape.
I wholeheartedly agree.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a challenge.
Sounds good.
Take a look at your own maintenance practices. Are you still stuck in a reactive mode, or are you embracing a more proactive, data-driven, and sustainable approach?
Good question.
The choice is yours, but the future belongs to those who recognize that a well-maintained world is a better world for everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So on that note, thanks for joining me on this deep dive into maintenance effectiveness.
It's been a pleasure.
And to all our listeners out there, we hope you found this insightful and maybe even a little bit inspiring.
Hopefully.
Until next time, keep those gears turning smoothly.